Hi, 3DMJers. This is Andrea Valdez, and you are listening to the 3D Muscle Journey podcast. Before we dive into today's episode, just wanted to remind everyone to head over to 3dmusclejourney.com and sign up for our Big 3 newsletter. We call it this because, in case you haven't noticed, our team comes up with 3 new pieces of content every week in the form of 2 articles and 1 podcast episode. Rather than remembering to check back with us 3 times a week, we can send it all to you in one single email every Thursday. This weekly digest also includes direct links to any other content that Team 3DMJ coaches are a part of throughout the entirety of the internet. Whether that's guest appearances, interviews, seminars, or courses, you will not miss any of it. So if you like hearing about all the free resources that we have to offer, all the products we sell, all the projects we are a part of, and all the ways you can get discounts, reminders, and early access to them, head over to 3dmusclejourney.com right now and sign up. Thanks so much for listening and enjoy the show. I'm talking to Alberto and Eric in this one, and as you'll hear Eric talk about in just a couple minutes, this entire episode is based off of questions that we received from followers on Instagram and Facebook. We answered queries about refeeds, deloads, gen pop coaching, drop sets, how we deal with peer pressure, accessory movements versus compound movements, and a whole bunch more. But before that, just wanted to take a quick moment and let y'all know that this will be the last episode of the 3DMJ podcast for the next few weeks. If you're listening to this episode upon its actual release at the end of May 2017, we'll be taking a brief deload, if you will, from podcasts and blog posts from now until July of 2017. So in that gap, throughout the month of June, we are honored to be traveling as a team to Australia to host a conference with JPS Fitness in Melbourne, followed by a 2 to 3 week period of in-depth creation and recording for our upcoming online store that is set to release on Thursday, July 6th of 2017. Whew. So again, we apologize for our small lapse in content, but we promise it's for a good cause. We will be providing a slew of free written and video content upon our return, and we'll even be giving away portions of our upcoming case study Q&A courses as well. More on that, obviously, when we return. So, but I guess what we do want is a few more questions, right, to flood in. We do have a collection started, but you can still submit. So if you want to submit a question of your own to us that either we could use for future podcasts, future blog posts, or to actually make those case study courses, you can do so at any time at 3dmusclejourney.com/case-study-app. Again, I know we didn't think that through very well. Okay, so 3dmusclejourney.com/case-study-app. I was going to say it, but I forgot I was spelling it. Okay, so if you didn't memorize that, no biggie. It'll be linked in the show notes as well. So like within iTunes, you can just click there. Or if you want to view the full-on show notes and leave us any feedback or whatever, you can always do that at 3dmusclejourney.com under podcast number 52 is this episode. Phew. Okay. So enjoy the episode. If you have questions for us, use that link. There's a whole form. We'd love for you to be really specific because we would love to give you specific answers, make videos about it, all that good stuff. Okay, so here's our first Q&A session. We'll probably do this again. Let us know if you like it or not, with Alberto and Eric. So here we go. See ya.
What's going on, 3DMJers? Myself, Alberto Nunez, Andrea Valdez, and the internet will be joining you today. We've got a cool semi-live concept for our podcast today, in that Alberto made some posts, some actual pictures of the 3 of us from different moments in our past. One of me in my racially insensitive days where I used to, just not really respect Native Americans. Had some Instagram posts where people could just ask us any questions that we would then address in this podcast. And for those who did not get that joke at all, I am not racist. Berto just photoshopped my head onto someone doing the chop And it was a Redskins game or a Chiefs game or something. I don't know.
FSU.
FSU. See, I don't even know about football. I'm not well informed enough to be
You're
racist.
not American. It's not upsetting to anyone.
It's true. This is true.
You only half.
Only half, right? I get residency in New Zealand. Actually, lose half of my.
You actually weren't born here anymore. I don't know if you know that.
True, or only half of me was.
Yeah.
So, without further ado, let's get into the questions that we have been given. Thank you, Internet, for that. Who wants to read the first one?
I will, because I'll go to that first post that Bert put that wasn't actually asking questions, but we got them. Mm-hmm. Oh, we can start light. We can do a warm up with Paul Revelia's question.
Yeah, that's a good one.
How did you two?
Paul Revelia? I've never heard of this guy. He sounds kind of. It's a weird last name.
I'm sure he's on Google or something.
Paul Revelia.
He does sound tall. He sounds tall.
He sounds like a baseball player.
That was also racist.
In high school, hello, ladies.
Mexicans.
I'm Paul Revelia.
Yeah, I was offended by that one actually. Okay. He wants to know how each of you came up with your bodybuilding.com usernames. I didn't have one, so it doesn't apply to me. So you go ahead.
Andrew wasn't around back in the day.
Yeah, I wasn't born till about 2008. So.
You heard it here, folks. Andrea's 7.
I was not around. Good math.
Yeah, she actually had the opposite effect from doing gymnastics, where she grew up very fast instead of being suppressed as a 7-year-old for the rest of her life. She'd actually be 8 feet tall if she hadn't done gymnastics.
That's true.
Berto, tell me how you became Father Flex.
Was it Father Flex?
It was Father Flex.
Don't make fun.
Sorry, it's great.
Yeah, this is serious business. Sense. Yeah.
Hey, this is no crime.
In all caps, too. In all caps, it was Father Flex.
That's serious if it was in caps.
He yells his name at you every time you meet him. Yeah. I am Father Flex.
I sound like a conehead when I say it. Yeah. Yeah. No, Papa Pump was taken, and I think, yeah.
Of course.
So I'm like, I need something fatherly with something that relates to weightlifting. So, it was either that or Daddy Dumbbells, but I'm like, that's not very marketable. Father is very formal, and Flex is fun. So we'll keep formal and fun together in one. Father Flex is what I went with. And dude, it was such a serious thing. Like back then, your username on bodybuilding message boards, that I would go to every message board that was semi-big at the time, and I would just register the name so no one would ever take my name, man.
Because Papa Pump was taken is the best sentence I've ever heard in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I cried. Okay, go ahead, Eric.
Square that. Because Papa Pump was taken. No context.
Yeah, so for me, I never had to worry about someone else taking my name because I had a weird, strange name that was probably pronounced correctly once by anyone besides me, and that was Quelly. So I actually got on the forums starting back in the early 2000s on rap battle forums.
Oh.
I was on bboys.com and rapmusic.com as eQuell, which was my MC name back in the day. Where I would participate in text battles before eventually graduating to audio recording battles. And I would make songs with the Illmic affiliates. And I was a well-accomplished battler, making it to the semifinals of Open Mic 3, I believe was my best accomplishment. Shout out to Illiterature, shout out to Weapon X, shout out to Diligence, shout out to OJ. I could go on, but we were literally like the internet Wu-Tang. There was 13 of us, so I'm not going to keep doing shout-outs. So,
oh my god,
my apologies to the rest of the Illmic affiliates. MC McKell, shout out to you, Milwaukee Stand Up. But anyway, I will say that I didn't feel comfortable just directly transposing eQuell into the bodybuilding world, so I retained a little bit of that and just called myself Quelly.
The best part is all that's true, listeners. That is true. And I'd like to personally thank Paul for asking that question. My abs are going to be sore tomorrow. Oh my god, I had no idea.
What would your name be? Like,
Something stupid like AB Fit. I hate it so much. I don't know. I do, but my name was taken almost everywhere by the time I realized I hated it. What would my name be?
Self-hate
Mama,
86.
Mama Most Muscular?
Mama Muscles.
Mama Muscles.
That's great. Well, no, you'd want to have that kind of seriousness and fun. So it'd be Mother Muscles.
Mother Muscles, yeah.
Mm.
Okay. Baby Mama Muscles?
Baby Mama Big Muscles. Get the BM going.
BM. Wait,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah, that double bowel movement in the house. So
Let's answer a real question, y'all.
all right.
Okay.
All right.
I mean, that was real and very serious, and thank you, Paul, again.
Thank you, Paul, for warming us up.
Hey, all right. The second question on the only other question on that promo thread. Question for Eric. We know that the recommendation for leucine is 2.5 grams a meal, but is there a certain amount to reach each day? That's from Nicholas Vanetti.
We know is a strong statement there.
Right.
There's probably a relationship with, and I believe it has been published before, with leucine and body weight, and probably even more specifically leucine and muscle mass. To a little background for everyone who's like, why are we asking about leucine? Leucine is one of the branched chain amino acids. It is a trigger for anabolism. I'm not going to go into the mTOR pathway because I'm not that much of a nerd. But nonetheless, shush.
Okay.
Nonetheless, it is thought to be one of the triggers for initiating muscle protein synthesis. However, it is not the only amino acid that matters, and I think it's not. I don't think you should be setting your protein intake or having a daily leucine intake. Take that, Lane Norton. I'm just kidding. No,
But he's not.
Just
kidding. I'm just kidding.
Calling you out, bro. No, in all seriousness, I think that it's probably better to look more holistically at your protein intake and think of it in terms of grams per kilogram per day, and then potentially spreading it around multiple meals. That's when it comes to using science to improve your bodybuilding, you want to be looking at applied research, not mechanistic research. And most of the research on leucine is primarily what I would call mechanistic or basic research, where they're examining an 8 to 16 hour period of dosing someone with leucine and seeing what kind of response you get. So really what you need to think about is long-term adaptations to resistance training, consuming protein. And you probably want to have predominantly high-quality protein in a reasonable amount for the whole day, spread apart. And sure, you need to pay attention to maybe each dosing is enough to meet a threshold for where you're getting the most out of it. So probably somewhere between 1.8 to 2.8 grams per kg per day, roughly evenly spread between at least 3 meals per day, primarily from high-quality sources. So if you do that, you won't even need to worry about your leucine intake for the day.
Word.
Take care of yourself.
Word, Quelly. I like it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Would have been better if you would have rhymed that.
Yeah, why didn't you?
Back.
Not a lot of rhymes with Quelly.
No, the whole answer.
Oh, the whole answer.
If you were a good rapper, you could do it.
My freestyle skills are not that up to snuff at the moment.
Okay.
All right, so we have a question from XOXO Keely. I've met Keely in real life, and she's...
Is that hug and kiss, Keely? Like
hug,
XOXO?
kiss, hug, kiss.
I don't know. So the X is the hug?
Yeah. No, X is a kiss.
Yeah, because it's a little more X-rated.
Ah. Okay.
Like Nacho Libre. Hug,
and the O is, encircles you, like the hug.
Yeah.
Okay.
I made that up.
That's how I remember it. I could
Probably
be wrong,
accurate, though.
But that's how
so
I remember
anyway,
it.
what does loving Keely have to say?
All right, so Keely wants to know, in a sport full of unnatural athletes, what has made you guys stay natural and away from the peer pressure?
Who wants to tackle it first?
I'll go. I've never felt that peer pressure in my whole life. Even though my first show was NPC, and I'm pretty sure half the people at the gym I trained at were on stuff, the gears, if you will. It was never. Is it normal that? Let me ask y'all. Have you ever been approached like, "Hey, I have this stuff for sale. If you want," like, has that ever happened to y'all?
Yeah, for me.
Really? Okay. See,
once.
that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
That never happened to me. First off, I never. I don't think I even knew enough to ask, and it just never crossed my mind. And within a year, I only focused on what I could do to me. I think I've always known that I'm fairly young at this, and I would never. I think just naturally in my brain, if I'm taking on something, I don't like relying on things that I don't need early. And obviously, I don't think I've hit my capacity yet. But it's the same as like, I didn't want to wear a lifting belt till I needed it. I don't like wearing knee sleeves till like very recently, things of that nature. So it seems like to me, that was never an option because it just never, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of growth that I could still do before.
You heard it here. Andrew Valdez is 8 months from taking steroids.
Yeah. Yeah. That's actually exactly what I said just now. Yeah. Good summary.
3D muscle journey, 100% natural bodybuilding until I stall.
Yeah.
Put that in a square.
Yeah.
So to really summarize, I've never felt that pressure even to begin with, so nothing like keeps me from it. And then I feel so strongly now, after I guess the amount of education I've had thus far in my life, I feel so strongly in the fact that there's a lot of stuff that I could do naturally before needing to rely on anything. And then if you really want to dive into it, we actually have a full podcast with the three of us. I can't remember which one it is, but we talked. Staying Natural is what it was called.
Yeah.
And our really in-depth reasons why. But in short, never even felt the peer pressure. Okay. One of y'all?
Sure. So I think I want to redirect this question a little bit back to Keely. And I would say your peer pressure is going to come from your environment and who you surround yourself with. And even more and more so in the age of the internet, you have a lot of choice in who you decide are your peers and who you interact with. So there's a couple assumptions in your question. One is that the sport is full of unnatural athletes. And I would say if you actually collected everyone who competes in drug-tested bodybuilding, and everyone's a fan of that, and everyone who's not interested in taking drugs, or in certain countries breaking the law, or just doing something they're not comfortable with, but who wants to bodybuild, you'd actually have a pretty sizable amount of people. I don't know if it'd be more than the number of people in bodybuilding who are, want to enhance themselves, which is totally fine if that's their choice. But I don't think it's like the ratio that your question implies of something like, most people are on drugs. How do you, few small exceptions, fight against the horde of peer pressure? Because I think there are a lot of communities you can be a part of that will support you in what you want to do. So I think the first step would be actually ask yourself, what do you want to do? Or do you actually want to stay natural? Because it's hard to be a victim of peer pressure if there isn't a part of you that isn't fully in decision about where you want to be and who you are and where you want to go. When I was a young man, I certainly wasn't very firm in who I was or what my values were or what limits and what things I want to chase down. And so I have a much better idea now of who I want to be and what I want to do. And peer pressure hasn't been an issue for me in a long time because I'm older, I guess. Sure, in high school I did a lot of dumb shit, and even in my early 20s that I did because I didn't know who I was. So I would say first, figure out who you want to be. And if that doesn't align with taking gear and the people you surround yourself with are actually putting peer pressure on you to take gear, those are some shitty-ass peers, man. You need to move on and find some better people in your life who are more supportive for your values. That's all I got to say about that.
Yeah.
You can drop the mic to that one.
Well, I just want to be clear, too. She didn't say, should I
drop my mic? Or?
No, that looks expensive. Don't do it.
Leave it? Okay.
But in her defense,
she didn't say that.
She didn't say, I feel. She said, how do you guys with the peer pressure? And I think that's a good point is she's assuming that we even have ever felt really pressured. And like you said, maybe when you were younger, but not now. And I just literally have never felt that.
Well, that's a fair point. Yeah, let me apologize because I made some assumptions about the assumptions that you made in your question. So...
It might be different too because I'm a girl. Why I feel less pressure. Like you guys might feel it earlier and more often than I do because it's a little more an obvious desire to be giant for a male than it would be for most females.
That's definitely true, and it's like there's not even really a place for a male who doesn't have just exceptional genetics to even compete in the NPC unless they want to stay at like the amateur level or try men's physique or classic bodybuilding, however that eventually might go.
This one?
But correct. It's just bigger trunks basically. With overhead poses, yes, thank you. But yeah, for a woman, like you can successfully compete at the highest level in bikini without taking drugs, or you can choose the natural route. So this is probably a little more options for competition for women that you don't feel as much pressure to take into gear.
Bert, or you think that was covered or what?
Well, yeah, but kind of just carrying on from what he said, there was a time where I was considering or I thought that I was going to use, but it all really came from me. Like no one told me like you need to take this kid in order to do anything. It was like everything that bodybuilding has always been to me. It's been very personal. It's just like when I started lifting weights, it was, I think in other sports, it was almost like the punishment. It's like, no, we hate like lifting weights. We like playing baseball. What are you doing, dude? Right? And the same thing with the food and when that was kind of conflicting with my life outside of the gym, like I felt the exact opposite. Like I felt discouragement sometimes from my peers, and obviously I was probably not doing a good job in balancing all those things, and I was worrying about things that didn't matter nutritionally at the time. But yeah, I didn't care. I didn't really care what other people thought, and I was doing this specifically for me. And when I felt there was going to be a time where I was going to perhaps take drugs, it was simply because of me. At that point, I didn't even know who to turn to. I didn't even know who the drug users were in my gym. I was just so like into my own work that like looking back now, I'm like, man, dude, like most of the gyms that you went to, like based on what I know now, I'd say about 30-40% of the people there were definitely taking something, but I didn't know. I didn't care. I was so like wrapped up in my own work. I was never paying attention to that one dude. Like, dude, like you're huge. Why am I not that huge? I want to be like you. I was so focused on my stuff. And I think that's what eventually kind of redirected me at another point. It was a lot of the good decisions that I've made. And I think a lot of you guys listening can relate to this. Have been when they've really been based on the things that you actually want to do for you. Whether it be career choice, who we date, things like that. When you try to please yourself first, I think, man, you get so much more out of like this life. So
I try to tell my wife, but she doesn't appreciate when I just please myself first that much.
Oh my God. God, how selfish.
Well, I just thought I was being like,
What was it? Self-care. I thought it was just
self-care.
Actually, Ian McCarthy said it was
radical.
A phrase.
I know he said it in my podcast too.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Oh, it was
radical.
It was so
radical
good.
Self-interest
Honesty.
or rational self-interest.
Rational self-interest.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it was radical.
It's rational.
Damn.
Rational. Radical.
I like that word though. No, radical's a thing. Like radical honesty is a movement. There's this guy.
There's a lot of radical movements that are great.
Yeah. Never mind.
Like the radical left and right of politics, radical Islam. These are all great things. I agree. Yeah.
Stop it. You're gonna get us in trouble. Okay. Are you on the Facebook?
If we lost all of our radical political activists who followed me,
and the Native Americans.
That's right. That's right.
All of our headdress.
I lost a quarter of the hotel.
Okay.
You said on Facebook there's some?
There's some, but I think actually there's a really good one here that I think is quite interesting.
Okay.
Where's here?
On that Facebook. So it's about Jeff. All right. So
we're not
shoot.
Jeff.
I can't load it up. Can you load up the Facebook? Someone? It's on my wall.
I got you. Do you want me to answer it in the voice of Jeff?
It's about Jeff. People all up in Jeff's business.
Can we speak for Jeff or not? I don't know. Do we feel bad about that?
Speak for Jeff.
Well, only if you can really imitate his voice well.
I can't. It's too quiet for me. Y'all know
Oh.
that. I'm way
The
too
guy
loud.
in the Dominican Republic, does a great like he puts on like his fake headphones and he's like, this is Jeff Albert and I'm chasing the physique, week 38.
You can start it by telling us what day it is and how the weather is, because Jeff does that.
That's right. Okay, so the question I think we're referring to is the second part of Yuven's question.
Yes.
Okay.
Also, Jeff seems to be eating a lowish amount of protein for a man his size. Protein requirements tend to increase with age. I love this question already. Is it purely preferential, or is there a reasoning behind it? So basically, he said, Jeff, you're so old, you need to be eating more protein. I can answer that as
the protein researcher. That'd be great.
Yeah. Strange thing for me to do. First, I would say that the anabolic resistance with age that could be potentially counteracted by taking more protein is more like elderly, not like mid-40s, So give the guy a break.
Especially
and then and then secondly, I don't actually know what his actual protein intake is, or whether that was just a one-time thing or normal or what have you.
It's in his blog. I'll look. Go ahead.
Look it up. Let's say he was on 165 grams of protein. That's basically going to end up being 1 gram per pound by the time he gets in stage weight. Which is not. I mean, it's certainly on the low end of what I would normally recommend, but I think we've talked about this before. As you start with a broad recommendation, then you see what works best from trial and error. And Jeff has certainly tried his hand at higher protein intakes and then gone lower and seen if he responds better to higher fat and higher carbohydrate. And so I think he's certainly within the range. That's probably like 1.8 grams per kg or 2 grams per kg based on his current body weight, which is it's on the low end for dieting. But I think, hey, as long as you can adhere, maintain muscle mass, show up on stage looking good, and you've actually done some self-data testing, more power to you.
And Jeff's done a great job maintaining muscle. I think in all the years I've seen him compete, with the exception of his the first year we met him, he's literally kept all his muscle. And it's strange because the biggest difference is just the fact that he cycles his carbohydrates. It's like it has more to do with the pace of the diet, I think.
I think it's his training too.
The training as well, yeah.
I remember, and also his job change, because I remember in 2009 he was telling me about how he was getting like chronic tendonitis and shoulder pain, and he was training low frequency, low volume, high intensity, and then basically just smashing repetitive movements for his job. And I think when that went away and he went to more like moderate frequency, moderately low volume, moderately high intensity, and he's able to train more frequently and hit each muscle group a little more effectively and not dash himself into oblivion, I noticed that he was able to sustain much more of an effective training throughout prep. I think he mentioned to me at the end of 2009, he was like, you can only train like twice a week or something like that because of his shoulder or something like that. It was probably a brief period, and I'm probably getting it wrong, but nonetheless,
his second to last vlog, as we're talking, says his protein's like 170 to 175. So just letting you know. Yeah, it's not too crazy.
So it's actually a little higher than was represented in that question. So, do we want to answer the first part of his question? Because I think there was actually 2 people asked about refeeds. I saw someone else ask about it.
Yeah, that's
so.
I think someone was asking about psychologically, if you don't need it, would it still be smart? I feel like I saw that somewhere.
Yeah, that was on Instagram. Someone asked whether if we don't feel we need a refeed psychologically, is there a physiological benefit? And then also the first part of that question before we got to Jeff was, are refeeds more of a physiological tool or a mental relief tool for the athlete? You want to get that, Berto, or should I cover the physiological? You want to talk about the psychological, or what you want to do? Or Andrew, you want to talk about it?
I was going to say, before we get into that, I think it's weird that these are both either-or questions, as though our psyche is not related to our physiology.
Are you telling me that my brain is part of my body?
I might be. I'll fight you for it. Yeah, but you know what I mean? Like, I think that's a really... the questions are both saying that it is different, and while I think while a refeed obviously does both, one individual might need more of one of those reliefs than the other at certain times within their diet. But go ahead.
Sure.
Eric.
And like, why might someone need mental relief? Is it because they're hungry and stressed? Well, a lot of that is actually going to come from the diet's effect on your body.
Yeah.
You know, so it's kind of apropos. I recently did a webinar with Zerdos and Knuckles for the promotion of mass, and my topic was basically, hey, look at all this research that actually is on nonlinear dieting. There's a little more than you think. It's disconnected. It's not always in the right population group, but there's a pretty straightforward relationship with overfeeding. The longer you do it for, the more of a positive effect it's going to have physiologically. So is a 24-hour refeed going to have a big impact on physiological markers we care about? No. Is a diet break of 2 weeks? Yeah, much bigger. You know, is taking a full off season? Yeah, even larger. But it doesn't mean it doesn't have a impact. And there is mental relief aspects to it. There's also aspects of replenishing glycogen. And there is some preliminary evidence that would suggest coming in and out of a deficit just within a week might help us maintain lean body mass. And it makes sense when you think about it. It's just less time in a deficit. And then when you actually get into multi-day refeeds, that's when you start to get a measurable physiological benefit that I think would probably be worth it based on our anecdotal experience. I mean, we've had a ton of success. I would say going from 24 to 48-hour refeeds, I don't know about you guys, but that's been a pretty noticeable change across almost all my clients, along with regular interspersed week-long diet breaks. I think those two things have made fat loss a much more consistent process, and muscle maintenance and training performance also better maintained. At least that's been my experience with my peeps.
I would agree. I think especially the training and the more advanced an athlete is, the likely the more they're doing in the gym, and you want to keep something that resembles that as you venture deeper into the diet. This is going to be, I think, this is going to be the first time that I've ever committed to multi-day refeeds over the course of a diet, and just so far it's been great because speaking of the mental side, I've been refeeding for 3 consecutive days. By the time I'm like halfway through my second day, I'm like, I just want to start dieting again, and I think that's great because what it does is that by the time I start dipping back into my low days, which I have 4 consecutive low days, it's just the deficit bothers me so much less. It's not until like the very end if it bothers me at all. And I think at this point, being just under 10 pounds, I think, over like an acceptable stage condition is the first time I've felt that way. So the mental part, I think, is huge. And I think sometimes people don't realize just how fragile they are in that department. I think everyone wants to be like Mr. Tough Guy, but you need to cater to that and just run things a bit more on the conservative side, I feel. So that's been the big one for me, is that by the time I get to the second day, I'm like, dude, you're ready. Like, you're ready. You feel good. What are you doing? Let's dip back in there. But by the time I get into my low days, I'm like, I am so glad I decided to commit to my refeed schedule. So that's huge. I think especially for a physique athlete, I think most of the injuries that we do see are on the mental side. And I think if I continue doing it this way throughout the course of my prep, I'll be in a much better position post-show than I ever have been.
Yeah, and just like what you said, Bert, remembering that we're not just trying to lose fat. Muscle maintenance is important, and if you can't train, like if nothing else, right, whether you're so hard that you psychologically don't need it, like if anything, that extra food will help you keep your gym performance up. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm happy when I'm performing too. Like if I'm lifting weights with something that resembles like my off season like form, I'm like this is happy time for me. Like nothing sucks more than going to the gym as a dieter and you're like, fuck, I'm so weak. You know?
Yeah. It's also practice for the recovery period after your show's over, when you have to transition into a calorie surplus. Most people, when I work with me for the first time and I ask them to start doing a 48-hour refeed, or even more difficult for them, the stomach, is a full week of refeeds, basically, a diet break.
I hate it.
Yeah, there's a huge fear of getting fat. And normally they become converts once they do it, and they don't even take a step backwards. Yeah. And it's basically just like charging up. So when they come back, it's not just 2 steps forward, it's like 3. But then when it comes time to put them in a controlled surplus and have them gain weight after 6, 7, 8 months of just focusing on losing fat, I think that transition is a little easier because you have a little less fear because you have more experience to back up that, this isn't going to be the end of all cuts ever, on my body. So
I never thought about it that way. That
it's practice.
Yeah, that refeeds make it almost harder, like, because things start moving faster and you get hungrier. And, like, I always get hungrier. If I ever had any refeed days through any prep, almost all of that extra food goes as late as possible because I know if I start with breakfast eating a bunch of extra carbs that I'm just hungrier the rest of the day. So, like you said, it is practice, but I never thought about that refeed days can end up feeling more difficult than a normal string of low days.
For me, it's always the day after the refeed.
Yeah.
Where it's like the day of 400 grams of carbs, like, this is awesome. The next day, it's like 150. That's bullshit.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think people don't think about it. Like, you're going to get hungrier afterwards. So.
Word.
A big thing that I get with the refeeds is that I feel watery, like super watery, and it feels like bad, and it feels like I'm backtracking. Like when I'm on my second or third day, I'm like, this feels like mushy. It feels bad. Like the muscles in my face are like full with glycogen. I'm like, this feels like what I feel like after my post-show meal almost. And like there's like a little sense of panic. It feels like foreign. It feels different. It feels like the exact opposite of what I felt like after those last few days. And I was thinking I'm like, dude, when I decided to, I'm done with the season, I'm like, you know what, this watery feeling, I was doing it like during the course of every week. Yeah. So, and that's what you feel like in the off season, like being filled up with glycogen is something that's like so foreign when you're deep into a prep. Like feeling full, I think sometimes like feels naughty, like I will remember sometimes I would think that I'm spilled over. And I would look at, I would ask Eric or Jeff, like, how do I look? And I'm like, because like I feel like I have too much in me right now. And they'd be like, no, you're still flat. So yeah, getting used to that feeling of eating enough, I think, is something that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a very pragmatic tool from the coach's perspective to be like, oh, okay, after 2 days of high days, you don't spill, you look great. Oh, third day maybe you do spill, or maybe you just start to spill at the end, or. It gives you an idea of what you can do with your peak week too.
Yeah. I think
Should we move on to the next question?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think we knocked it out the park. What's the next one? I think that might have been it on Facebook.
From the top? From the bottom?
Well, I think if we start from the bottom.
They came in first. All right.
I was just gonna make a joke and do some song lyrics, so that works too.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, now they're here.
The whole team's here. Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
Gotcha. I would.
So we start from the bottom.
Whoa! Let's not start on the bottom.
Okay.
We'll go second to this rubber two.
Yeah, rubber toe. Rubber toes.
I'm not making fun of you. There was a guy at this gym Roberto. Alberto knows who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
From Sacramento.
Yeah.
Rubber toes.
He probably listens to this podcast.
I hope so. Hey, Rubber toes.
Yeah.
How you doing?
You want to do the Brad Schoenfeld question, or?
Yeah, we can do that one. Let me take a look at it real quick. Can you read it out loud?
I can.
Yeah.
All right, never mind. Go ahead.
Go for it.
I'm just kidding.
You go.
Go for it, Andrew. Your voice is prettier than mine.
Me. Okay. Brad Schoenfeld had made a post recently saying that since compounds are more fatiguing per volume and all volume is not created equal, that to balance fatigue for hypertrophy, more or majority of volume should come from single joint movements versus compounds. Isn't perhaps compounds more effective volume even if lower overall volume versus single joint?
I think this is one of those classic cases where a little bit extra is added onto someone's statement, and your own interpretation of what they're saying is tacked on the end. Like, I actually was in that post and I liked it, and I started talking with people in there. And I don't actually remember Brad. Yes.
I don't think
Andrea?
There's another one from him. It might be related. Can I read it real quick?
Sure.
Okay. It says this idea of a low volume resensitization strength phase.
That's a different question.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
it's a different Sorry, I had to get like 5 words in to realize that. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no worries. In fact, you can read without talking.
I know. It's really hard for me not to talk, as y'all know. So never mind. We'll leave it.
So what the hell was I saying? God damn it. I was saying that, yes, I was in that discussion, and I don't actually remember Brad saying that most of your volume should come from isolation movements. More so, he was saying, hey, think about it. A set of squats is a lot more fatiguing than a set of leg extensions. And people kind of lost their mind over this, and I think it's because they always want things to be black or white. Like, should I do compounds or isolations? Like, damn it, that's the wrong question, And not that you're asking that, but I think to put things into context, it's very true that compound movements generate more fatigue, but they're also more efficient. When you do a squat, you're not just training your quads, you're training your quads, your glutes, your lumbar to an extent, your upper rack position. There's a lot of things going on there. There's even some calf involvement, depending on your bar position and how deep you go and the length of your leg. So it's very difficult to mimic everything that a compound movement does with using isolation movements. And I think because of the way the bodybuilding paradigm of looking at exercises is, we often oversimplify movements and attach them to body parts. Like we think, oh, squats is legs. It's more than that. Or we think, okay, a lat pull down is for the lats. Well, guess what? At the very, very top position, you're actually getting a little pec. If the pec is stretched and it contracts, it brings you back. And believe it or not, one part of the tricep actually extends the shoulder as well. And oh my God, when you do a bicep curl, you're actually getting some front delt. So the involvement of muscles during even quote unquote isolation movements is actually much more complex than we give credit. So thinking that you can do, a hip thrust and a leg extension and get the same effect that you would get from a squat is probably not true. So there's definitely a role for the efficiency of compound movements, and they train multiple muscle groups in ways that you may not be able to predict at once. However, you don't just want to only do compound movements because, especially the barbell-related movements, there's a higher injury risk, there's a higher skill component, there's a higher fatigue, and they don't always allow you to move in more natural ways, where if you had a dumbbell or body weight movement, like, for example, the bench press locking both shoulders into a symmetrical movement pattern when you may not have symmetrical shoulders. In fact, no one really does. And same thing with your hips. So excellent hiccup. That was beautiful. So, yeah, I think the take-home message there is that you probably want to still start with your compounds. You still want to focus on them and progress with them. But you should have a healthy share of isolation movements in there as well. I kind of went like... So yeah, that's what I would recommend. I think when you really look at it, you might end up having more total isolation movements. If your leg day is like squat, RDL, and then leg extension, leg curl, calf raise, that's 3-to-2 ratio. So yeah, that could certainly be the case, but it's not necessarily because one is better than the other. It's just they serve different purposes.
And can I say something on that?
Because
I've experienced both into that spectrum. Like when I've been like deep into powerlifting, and I'm still a bodybuilder, and I want to get in all my secondaries. Remember deep into my last season where I was kind of combining both. Like, man, was that hard to manage. It's like I needed to get this amount of work in order to be to perform the way I wanted to on the platform. So by the time I got to like all the secondary stuff, I was spent, and perhaps, I had a very hard time focusing and being progressive with those other important movements, the isolation movements. And then also just more recently, up until maybe about 10 months ago, there was a lot of big compound movements, a lot of barbell movements that I wasn't doing. And it was a pain in the butt to be able to put together a training split that kind of made up for what a lot of the squatting and deadlifting that I was doing prior was taken care of. So, yeah, a big part of that is finding like the right mix of both.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that is going to be personal. Like there's some people that, man, they can squat and they have like a very fully developed like lower body. Like their calves might not even need any more work with the way they're put together. So what that ratio is going to look like is going to be so different. There's some people that you give them the big three and they develop these super symmetrical physiques. And then there's people like me that up until a certain point, like, I can get away with a lot of barbell movements. I have some natural symmetry, but I'll end up looking like Gumby over time if I don't add some isolations.
Well, and you're also very, very advanced. So, like, your weights are pretty damn heavy. I think just people forget where they are, and when the questions like this come in, they forget that a starting strength would probably do them fine for like a really long time.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of thing. I personally have grown a shit ton in the past year and a half, 2 years. I do almost zero isolation movements. But I also, again, nutritionally, I eat a lot. My volume overall is pretty high. So, meh.
Yep.
Okay. Next question?
Sure, let's do it. Did you want to get that second part of that question that was unrelated?
I think Eric wants that one.
Sure.
Didn't even hear all of it. I remember.
Let me throw it to you, and you let me know if you want to.
I'm a good catcher. Throw it at me.
Oh, whoa. Okay. This idea of a low volume, quote unquote, resensitization strength phase where one maintains weight to resensitize to hypertrophy because after 3+ mesocycles of high volume training, you develop resistance to hypertrophy. Thoughts? Question mark?
I've never seen anything that would indicate that's actually a real thing.
Yeah.
I think what he's trying to say is that, remember that Greg Nuckols article that came out a while back? I think he's speaking.
I'm unsure if he's referring to some of Israel's stuff of phase potentiation, or if he's referring to Greg Nuckols saying take some time off to resensitize, which is not a new concept. Brian Haycock suggested that back when he promoted hypertrophy-specific training. Or if this is related to stop gaining weight so you can get insulin sensitive again. It's a little bit ambiguous, but I would say as far as a training stimulus, you just need to induce a progressive overload to get an adaptation. However, you can't perfectly know your level of recovery and readiness and perfectly modify your training to that at all times. So you're going to invariably incur fatigue beyond what would be ideal. And sometimes just what's necessary to induce an adaptation in a pretty advanced lifter. So you're going to have some systematic way of managing fatigue, which is just basic periodization, really. And whether that's a deload or not, that will fulfill the same purpose and be effective, but probably not for the reasons that you may have heard that there is some molecular reason why you need to, desensitize the muscle to loading. And a lot of the research where you actually have to take time off and come back, they make rapid gains, but they don't shoot past where they were. They get back to where they were, and then it's back to the same curve. And you can make an argument, that's better. It's less time training to get the same result. But you have to remember that every time people do those studies, it's not realistic for the group that's not taking the deload to not try to induce even more workload. So if you're not taking time off, even if the other person comes right back to you when they do take time off, what would you have done for that 2-month, 3-week period? Would you have just trained exactly the same way, or might you have increased your work capacity to then do more to get a greater progressive overload? So it's not necessarily taking a step back when you take time off from training, but it's at least not moving forward when in another, parallel dimension, you may have actually been able to increase your work capacity and keep improving.
I think
which is a bit of a tangent from the question, but
that's okay. I think we talked about in the when I was with Jeff and Brad in the program hopping podcast. Basically, this thing where someone will find like a very powerlifting centric program, run that for a while, get the shit beat out of them, but their lifts went up, so like they're excited or whatever. But then they get so tired that they're like, "Let me do a bodybuilding split." And they're like, "Oh damn, I look good. I'm getting so good at these isolations. I'm making all these gains." And then they're like, "But I missed the heavies." And they go back, and then they think like, "Oh, that bodybuilding was trash. Look at me doing all this stuff." So it's like you think that this, like you said, you end up periodizing yourself on accident just because you're looking for this new, different thing. When it really is, if you wanted to run like a strength block for a while and then a hypertrophy block, like on purpose, you might end up the same instead of just saying like, "That one's trash, let me go this way. That one's trash, let me go this way," and thinking you have these new gains when it's like you just kind of stopped for a while.
Yep.
Anyways,
By the way, this question kind of relates to. We can kind of hit this one up too because it involves this. If someone's in this situation because I guess they're hurt. Name is Chayo Yang Si, I think. And the question is, that's the best I can do. There's a Yang in the C though, I think. When trying to get back to lifting after 4 to 6 month break due to injury or other circumstances, should you try to get your volume and strength back to where you used to as fast as possible to induce muscle hypertrophy, or is it better to slowly accumulate volume for muscle hypertrophy in the long run? Thanks, love the work you guys put out. So someone took a big break and they're looking to get back to where they were. They were, I'd say, pretty well trained prior to the break. What would be the best approach to get? I guess the most efficient way, because that is definitely what this is looking for.
I would say that in the way that I hear that is that the problem, in my opinion, is that after an injury, the goal actually shouldn't be hypertrophy. The goal should be healthy. And so whatever injury it was, whether it would be more hypertrophically beneficial to jump into wherever you were, what's more beneficial is you getting healthy, and your connective tissues are probably weakened. Your leverages are probably a little different. So always looking career first, and hypertrophy will follow rather than the other, because if you dive into hypertrophy and you re-injure yourself, then it doesn't matter, right? Because you're back at square one or 0 or -3. But go ahead, Eric, and finish.
Oh, dude, and basically the easy answer to your question is B, not A, right? Is do the latter. But the rationale is really that it's the scenario in A is not actually what's going to happen if you try to dive right back into or achieve the level of workload and strength that you got. You might get there, but you're doing it at a tremendous risk. And it's also just not necessarily beneficial, because progressive overload implies that you need to progress and create overload relative to where you are, not where you were. So that means if you can effectively grow and get stronger and progress on less, doing more than that isn't necessarily going to, there's only a certain point where doing more is actually beneficial before it actually, you start coming down the other side of that parabolic curve. And your rate of progress is you're still progressing, but it's actually less because you're generating all this unnecessary fatigue from excess volume. And every unit of volume is a unit of risk. So I think it's really important to focus on gradually building back up and being conservative. As Dr. Zerdos likes to say, the easy thing is to just jump back in and go balls to the wall and turn your training into an animal pack ad. That's why we're bodybuilders. That's why we're powerlifters. The thing that takes discipline is to actually keep your RPE a little lower, leave a few less sets on the table than you would probably prefer to do, and gradually build back up so that you can have the things that Andrea talked about, like connective tissue building, and also globally just build more fatigue resistance and work capacity before you jump into too much.
I think in practice we've seen people come back with a lot less work than what you would think. Like you mentioned, they shoot back up to their baselines like pretty quickly. Yeah,
it doesn't take that much. I'm experiencing this right now. I'm still not fully back up to where I'm at. I'm like 10 weeks post-op from surgery, and I'm still doing like once per week, 3 sets of like 3x5 on like half squats, and I'm leaving probably 2 to 3 reps in the tank at least on all sets, and I'm up to like 160 kilos from starting at like 100, and 100 wasn't easy when I started, so it takes a lot less than you think.
And I think just what's an important underscore is the answer of me saying like health and longevity and like you just not breaking your shit again is because 4 to 6 months of a break is very substantial. It's not like you rolled your ankle and 2 weeks later you probably could be squatting again the same. But but 4 to 6 months is like, if it's that long of a break, then the injury was probably was serious enough to have not just affected that one part of your body. Like your body works together. And so you messed up your shoulder, like your lat probably sucks. Your pec might be a little jacked up. Your elbow might be weak. So, yeah.
It could also be psychological. I know a lot of people, an injury that may not be that bad, the reaction to it is often way worse than the injury itself. or they make it worse from coming back too quickly. Yeah. So I think it's really important to focus on what you can do, not what you'd like to do or what you can't do, which are kind of the two ends of the extreme there of, fuck it, I'm not going to do anything, my life's over, I can't train, or I'm going to get right back to where I was, I don't want to take any steps backwards and then hurt yourself worse.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said for preventative care and introducing, like, maybe there's your bodybuilding program, right, that you'd like to slowly get back into or like to get back into as quick as possible. But if you're feeling like shitty because you're not there yet, there's a lot of stability work, flexibility work, mobility work that you don't have to do forever, but that could definitely replace your heavy volume in a very productive way. That's what I had to, I just went through that with the shoulder for like a year. I mean, the babiest of baby embarrassing things, but they really were important.
I'm probably going to be keeping banded clamshells in my training even after my hips are fully recovered. Yeah. Just because I've noticed it seems to help things. It's hard to, I mean, it's very individual, but yeah, me doing little Jane Fondas with a band is not the same as me squatting 500 pounds, but if it helps keep me healthy so I can squat 500 pounds, then you damn well I'm going to keep it in the program.
It's also just Eric's favorite movement, just so y'all know.
I really dislike spreading my legs over and over.
He really likes training abduction. It's his favorite.
Do we have más preguntas?
Yeah, we have. Pick one, Eric.
We have more now?
I picked this last one. There's quite a few.
Am I on the grams or the book?
The grams would be good.
Okay.
I think there's more there. That's what we ask people to do.
Can we do Darko Botics just because he's really cool and I like his name?
Because he has the best name ever?
Yeah, and he's one of your SBS peeps.
Shredded by Science Stand Up, and Berto is rocking the shirt.
Hey. And he's coming to see you, Eric, in July.
Awesome. Well, Darko, I look forward to that. So, okay, the question is, first of all, hi, I'm a huge fan. I absolutely love everything you guys are doing. Thank you. Thank you guys for the years of education. You're welcome. Two-part question. Okay. Do you include back offsets when programming for your athletes? And the second part is back offsets versus progressive warm-up sets for overall volume accumulation.
I think he might have meant straight sets as opposed to back offsets, right?
I think what he means, and correct me if I'm wrong in July when you see me, is is doing a heavy top set and then reducing the load and doing more sets to get volume, or basically doing an extended warm-up. Say like you're hoping to do 180 for 5, so you do 120 for 5, 130 for 5, 140 for 5, 155, and you build up volume that way. So to answer,
working upwards or working downwards?
Basically pyramid or reverse pyramid, more or less, I think. So the first part is, do I include back offsets when programming for my athletes? Yes, but not for necessarily the goal of accumulating volume. So for example, specifically with a power lifter who might be in a phase of training where let's say we're after a long season where they just peaked for Worlds or something like that, and they're wrecked physically, they're wrecked mentally, and they're wrecked emotionally just because this is a huge season for them. And I want to put them into a moderate volume, low intensity kind of transition block, but I also don't want them to completely lose their ability to be strong and to kind of feel like they're starting in a deficit, if you will, with their first build up for the next season. I might have them do a single at an 8 and then do their 3x5 at 75%, which would be pretty easy and good recovery. Just to kind of keep that fifth gear there. I think that's a very useful thing to do, is just toss a little bit of quote unquote neuromuscular work into a more higher volume phase. So that's why I use it. As far as accumulating volume and either building up or going down, I think there's utility in both. Like some people have no issue making fewer warm-up sets and making large jumps in load. And this is also exercise specific. I'm sure Andrea could speak to this, but making a 20 kilogram jump in a clean and jerk or a snatch will mess your shit up. You will be doing it incorrectly because you're modulating the velocity and that you're lifting at and the depth that you're catching at to the weight. However, on a squat, it's not the same. Like I will often go like 70, 120, 170 back when my hips were sorted for my warm-ups. And that's my last heavy set. I'm like, okay, that's 384, and I'm going to work 425, and I'll make like one small jump and then go. And the Olympic lifters in the gym would look at me like I was out of my damn mind. But I would warm up like them when I did Olympic lifts. And I tend to need a few less warm-ups. And I also do an extended like body weight warm-up. But anyway, there is value in doing those build-ups. And yes, they can serve to build some volume up. Like if you need to do that regardless to have effective training on your big lifts, then yeah, I mean, think about some of those moderate sets as some of the volume you might count. So you're not, blowing yourself out of the water and wondering why everyone else can handle more volume than you, when really they just don't need to warm up as much. On the other hand, though, if you don't need that many warm-ups, it doesn't really make sense to do so much volume that you actually fatigue before you get to your heavy set. And I think a reverse pyramid from a theoretical on-paper perspective probably makes a little more sense. Make the warm-up jumps you need to make before you go heavy, and then if you want to use the back offset approach, then you get the heaviest work out of the way before you fatigue, before you do volume work.
Yeah, and I think I just wanted to underscore and agree that it depends if you are an athlete who needs to perform 1 RMs. Because it matters a lot more whether a heavy set ever happens, right?
Yeah.
If you're just trying to get jacked and hypertrophy and like whatever, that's cool. But yeah, and then to agree with you, the jumps I make when warming up for my back squats are 30 to 40 pounds for the most part. On a snatch, the last warm up before the top is usually within 10 pounds.
There you go.
Clean and jerk probably within like 10 to 15. But yeah, but a back squat, 30 to 40. Yeah. And granted, though, we also have to mention that I can back squat obviously like almost twice as much as I can snatch. So, but it's still a third versus half, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So even relatively, it's still less. Yeah.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Next, can we do Cerna?
Yeah.
Cerna's my homie. All right. Main metrics that should be tracked: Gen Pop versus athletes, in order to assure that the clients get results and that the coach has enough information. And like I was telling you before, Cerna is one of my athletes, and so I know he's trying. I know this question comes from someone who wants to be a coach. And that's obviously why he asked, but
go for it.
Okay. It's just like I think one thing I want to tell you, Cerna, though, is that Gen Pop, like my mom versus like the 30-year-old like just had a baby, or like super different Gen Pop, right? So we can't always think of it as like athletes in that. So I actually don't know, and I haven't talked to him. I think this is like college kids, his peers, that he helps out sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Gen Pop is very broad.
Yeah.
I mean, often we as contest prep coaches will be like, anyone who's not getting in a singlet or in a Speedo is Gen Pop. But there's a huge difference between I don't want to compete, but I want to get as big and strong as possible, and I don't want to be unhealthy, and I've never trained before in my life. Those are probably shouldn't be in the same category.
Yeah, so can we attack that as, let's say, his peer? So let's say a college kid just getting into lifting.
So how about a recreational lifter versus
let's
someone who wants to be on stage at some point?
Okay, so recreational lifter. This is hard because I'm trying to think about like when I was personal training and who I was as a college kid and my peers, and they actually were scared of weights, especially the females, right? Or the females were scared of weights. And we would do.
Do we want to assume we're dealing with people who aren't afraid of weights?
Yeah, that'd be nice, huh?
I mean, I'm assuming if he's working with them, he's like, all right, they're lifting what
they're
doing my program.
This would be way easier if I didn't know, sir. And I'm like, who was the last person you asked me a question about? I'm going to try to get that on my brain.
I've got another question from Tom Smith.
No.
It's exactly the same question.
Oh, okay.
So let's answer that one. No, I'm just tricking you.
Okay. I get it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So things to measure. Obviously, for people who we're talking to, right, body comp matters, right? It's not just I'm diabetic and have 40 pounds lose. It's like, okay, recreational lifter, mostly they want to look different. Whether that's the intention or not, that's true. So aesthetics and strength. So what matters? This would be good for the post that we wrote that's in the pyramids: accuracy, flexibility, and consistency. Right. So if you again had a guy who is what are they willing to track, I guess is the first question. How much can you ask of them? So regardless of whether you think you have enough information or not, I think it's important to first assess, like, what is this person capable of tracking, right? And that might change over time. So if right now we're not even worried about food, it's just like, can you do these? Maybe adherence is the first step, if we're being honest, right? Can you go to the gym and do this sheet 4 days a week? Would be the first thing, right? And then maybe we would introduce calorie goals, or actually maybe have them track if they've never done that before, nutritionally. And then we would go to calorie goals, then protein, so we tighten that up, then macros. And I guess training-wise, what can they adhere to? Then I guess it would depend on if they want to get strong, want to look different, want to compete in powerlifting ever. Yeah. What they enjoy, if adherence is finally just now mastered, maybe that would be important. Y'all want to chime in with that? So I think that's it, right? Is a gradient of what can you get from them.
Yeah, I guess there's a lot of it depends is there.
Yeah.
I would say for someone right off the street who is interested in started training, I think the most important thing is to help them develop a clear set of goals.
Yeah.
Because then if you know what their goals are, then you can know what you need to assess to determine whether or not those goals are being successfully achieved.
Yeah.
And I would say, in contrast to something Andrea said, that if the person's goals aren't explicitly related to aesthetics, which is not really in contrast because you said that's probably what someone wants. If they don't have strong aesthetic related goals and they are perfectly fine with their body at the moment, I would actually have them stay away from tracking nutrition or body comp or things related to that. And maybe just focus on eating healthier and eating in a way that might support their goals a little more, because most people are going to make some pretty significant changes if they get in a serious weight training program off the bat. And then I think once that kind of peters out and their natural behaviors may or may not be in the way of further progress, if that's where their goals go, that's when you can start tackling those things and start, that the period before they're tracking anything is all about education. So they understand what you're going to ask them to track once you decide to tell them to do so. That's always pretty useful. I mean, to give you a parallel of why it depends so much, we as bodybuilding prep coaches, we have isolated a very few number of variables that we know we need to track. We track body weight using averages so we can get a clear picture. We track macronutrients and calories, which are kind of the same thing. And then we track resistance training performance, visuals, and then we have subjective tracking, which is really just us communicating with our client. And that's all we need. When someone goes, "Hey, I got a DEXA," I go, "Okay." But yeah, that's nice. That's kind of cool. But don't put too much faith in that, because you can't scream at the judge who places you second that I was 4%. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, so. I think knowing Cerna too, like he's a very intelligent and very analytical SBS student as well. Knows how to he probably could program another intermediate lifter, right? But I think something that he and a lot of people who are decently savvy have a problem with when working with Gen Pop is they want to track volume so bad.
That'll take care of itself. If you just put them on a basic kind of in the ballpark ranges of what's appropriate for strength hypertrophy, if that's what they're training for, then just let them progress in the gym. It's going to happen so easily without you modifying much.
Right.
Anything, like honestly with beginners, when I was working as a personal trainer, I was modifying exercise selection and repetitions just for the people who were not satisfied with solely progress. Because I'd have people who did not care that their dumbbell press went from 15 pounds to 30 pounds, the same number of reps in 6 months. And I'd be like, okay, well, shit. And we got to do, hey, let's do some hit sprints and we'll do some like jump rope. And hey, next week we can do some, some push-ups and claps and whatever. Like you change things up just to make fitness enjoyable. But other people, the only thing they care about is progressing. And that's a little more kind of in line with what we do. But it depends on the individual.
Yeah, and you got to think too, the first year of someone stepping in the gym, they're if they do the same exercise today and they do it in a week, they do it once a week, they're looking at it and they want to do 5 pounds more and they want to do 5 pounds more, or they want to, you know what I mean? To where you don't have to tell them like you're doing 4 sets of 8 this week, then 4 sets of 10 the next week, and then 4, like they're, like when you said, they'll just kind of, they're figuring out on their own. There's neural pathways coming in. They're learning what it feels like to quote unquote burn. Like there's a lot of cool shit going on without you needing as much. I guess what I'm trying to say is with Gen Pop, a lot of times you don't need as much as you think if you're a savvy lifter.
Yep. If you understand that the goal is progress and you set up some kind of structure, you'll be fine.
Yeah, and you said this too, right? When you were personal training for a while, you were like, everyone should train the way I train and care this much about these things as I do.
Exactly.
And I think that's really, really common, especially like people who are so passionate and young, and they just found this like within the last 5 years, and they're so gung-ho, and they just assume, and they want to, in a nice way, spread the word everywhere. I did the same shit too. Go ahead. Bro.
And this is something that, because when I get my Skypes, like most of my Skype consultations that I do, they are general population. They're often that's what they are. There's some people who are trying to have a good off season so that then I can inherit a proper situation and we make it on stage. But I think the biggest differences, or something that I have to watch out for, is that like my goals are not their goals.
Yeah.
That is huge. That is huge. And then the other thing is often they don't know what their goals are. They don't. So we need to create goals, and then we need to decide if these goals are realistic. You know, this lady's bringing me a poster of some chick who's half her age and has this like this really nice body. It's like, no, like we can't do that. Maybe we should focus on other things. So I think with general population, like just to get them started so they can start making progress that we can track, we have to identify what the goals are. Are they realistic? And then we can start deciding whether or not we're moving in that direction. Dude, I Skyped with a guy that didn't want to lift weights a few years back. He did not want to lift weights at all. Yeah, he's like, it's like I have no interest in lifting weights, but I think you guys are pliable enough that you can help me. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess we'll walk is what we did. But again, like to me, it's like I respect that you don't want to lift weights. I don't think that's weird. This is how you want to go about it. So sure, we'll do that.
I respect that, but I think it's weird that he contacted us.
I'm like, have you seen a picture of me all veiny and stuff, dude? Like I lift weights, you know? Like,
well, and I think too. Oh, go ahead.
Fitness. We are bodybuilding.
We're naked. We're like naked. We lift weights. Those bodies. We take off our clothes and pose.
Yeah. I think
our muscles that lift weights.
Another thing too is when you say like their goals aren't our goals, but sometimes their goal, they don't
realize it is. No, we have like you want muscle, you just don't realize.
They don't know the route to their goal. Yeah. A lot of times, I think like they hold this poster and you're like, okay, this person does this, 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 and this, and they're like, I could do that, and it's like, no, you don't understand. Within these 4 things are these other 4 things, and within, so yeah, that's, I guess we're like on a wayside tangent, but managing expectations. If you say these are your goals, are you willing to undertake these things that are required to get to those goals? And yeah.
And are you willing? That is a discussion you have to have. And what are you willing to do? And it's funny with the athletes, the biggest difference I think is that we need to sell them on, like, there's still a little bit of like, is this really what you want? Like, is the stage really for you? Right? You know, it's like, it's those are my motivation Mondays. I'm like, if you have to keep looking at your Instagram to keep going, this might not be your thing. Yeah. But the other thing is like with the advanced, just with athletes, it's going to be sustainability. Like no one who wants to make it on that stage wants to hear like slow down, dude. It might be a 2-year process for you, you know. Yeah. So the starting point is so different. I think that's the biggest part.
Yeah. To bring it full circle, I think to answer that question is you have to you and the person have to have a very clear idea of what the goals are before you can start tracking variables, and then philosophically, you want to nail it down to just the key essential variables that you can get, because additional information is actually not even just not useful, it's sometimes distracting.
Yep.
All right. Good bow, Eric.
Thanks.
Yeah.
You like how I thought there was really a guy named Tim Smith or Tom Smith?
Yeah, that was hilarious. All right, are you guys on Facebook or Instagram? What are we looking at?
I don't look at Facebook. Remember?
It's gonna upset me if I look on Facebook. Someone's gonna say something.
Okay, so we did Darko. We did the coming back to injury.
Perez.
Okay, what's the question?
All right. What is the most amount of weeks and least amount of weeks you would suggest going before a deload? I have been deloading as frequent as the muscle and strength pyramids progression scheme demonstrate in the book. Thanks, dude. But sometimes I feel like I can go a few more weeks, specifically in secondary work. Is it detrimental to stop and deload when you feel like you can keep going?
No, I think it's just important to have a complete understanding of what a deload is for, and also the way the muscle and strength pyramid books are written. I didn't write Eric Helms's intermediate, novice, and advanced programs with a fancy name. I wrote examples of how to implement the principles. So you could certainly set up a training program based on the principles in the muscle and strength pyramids to where you are not overreaching over 3 weeks and then deloading over 1. You're doing it over 5 or 6. And really the only way to know what's appropriate is to try it out, and also to see that look at deloads as they're introing you into the next block so that you're recovered and you can make some good progress, rather than, man, can I get away with not doing it? It's like that's not the way to look at deloads. They're not a step back from your training. They're managing the fatigue so you can kick some more ass. So it's only detrimental if it's detrimental, and you can only find out if you try to set up a training a different way. And it's totally going to be dependent on the volume you're at, the intensity, the RPE, your recovery levels, what you've got going on in the rest of your life, and your individual genetics. So that's not necessary. You can't apply one, deload and overreaching schedule to everybody. I kind of have to write a book, but I also state that that's not the only one way to do it. So. Yeah,
he also mentioned. He says, I feel like I can go a few more weeks, specifically in secondary work. With the goal of managing fatigue, you could just not do compounds, and that would be a deload. So It's just not looking at it so like I'm doing nothing this week. It's like taking away compounds is actually a pretty substantial amount of load that you are taking away. And if that makes you feel better to keep something full force, and that is your curls and your leg extensions, then cool. So there's just a lot of ways to do it. And Brad will have a lot more to tell you all about that soon when his deload book comes out.
This is true. Right. Still editing that. Yeah, it's good. But think about it this way. It's like if you're supposed to change the oil in your car on a roughly every 3-month basis, would you ask, I think I can get away with another month of driving? like there's no, there's not, I don't think there's a real benefit to trying to put off your deload as long as possible. There's only potential harm, in my opinion. Yeah. Deload's not a step backwards. People make a big deal out of deloads. Like, I remember there was this whole discussion around, like, should I drop my calories on deload week? And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? It's like one less set per exercise. Like, I'm going to eat half an apple less on the days where I have a deload so that I don't accumulate fat. Like, get the hell out of it. Focus on something else, It's really not that big of a deal. It's just a lower stress week. You can maintain intensity, drop your RPE just slightly, so you drop your reps a little bit, and drop a third of your sets off, and you're good to go.
There's a lot of ways to do it.
Well, when I hear a question like this, I hear right away like, oh, you're an ambitious athlete. Like, you want to get after it. You want to make progress. Like, I don't think sandbagger. And like, when I look back at the timeline of a lot of athletes, myself included, like a lot of the deloads that I was forced to take were because of injury, not because I did something wrong with my programming. When you look at an athlete who, has trained for 15 years, but a third of that was injured or limited, we could say, that's going to affect your progress more than like maybe your deload is coming up 2 weeks quicker than it needs to be realistically. So I'd rather stay healthy, be safe, and like have as minimal setbacks as possible. I think that's now more than ever I understand that. And if I could grab that like 24-year-old version of myself by the ear and be like, dude, get this through your fucking head, that would have changed so much for me.
Berto and I used to take forced deloads all the time.
Oh, yeah.
When we tore some shit.
Yeah, train until I throw out my
back. So everything hurts. I think I'm a deload this week.
I can't physically do training, so I'm deloading. Yeah.
Are we set, y'all? I think we're set.
Yeah, I think this was really good. This was really good.
Because we're an hour and 15 in.
Yeah, and we want people to hour 30.
Well, we haven't been talking on camera the whole time.
Oh, that's right. That's
that
right.
Was us talking.
That you guys can't know about.
Missed all the secrets.
All the gossip.
Hey.
All the industry secrets.
Yeah, we're I think we're good.
Cool.
This was good.
All right, I'll talk to y'all next week.
All right. Thanks for all the questions, everybody.
Hold on, we have to give Steve a salute.
Thank you, guys. Oh.
He does that. Steve. Thanks, Steve.
Steve. Yeah.
Steve
the RD. Thanks.
Steve the RD.
Do we have an RD?
Yeah, we do have an RD. Oh, SteveTaylorRD.com. Okay, guys, see you later. Bye.
Hey, everybody. It's Eric Helms. Thanks for tuning into our podcast. As you know, at 3DMJ, we promote evidence-based approaches to the lifting community. If that's something you want to dive deeper into, I'd encourage you to check out my research review, Monthly Applications in Strength Sport, or for short, MASS. This is a review that myself, Dr. Mike Zerdos, and Greg Knuckles put out every month. We cover the latest research publications that are applicable to strength and physique athletes, or anyone who's looking to get stronger or improve their body comp. Our content is in both written and video format. For more information on how to subscribe, check out 3dmusclejourney.com/mass. That's 3dmusclejourney.com/MASS for further details. Thanks for tuning in.